Hi, I'm Congressman Bob Filner, Chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. And through the miracle of television and internet, I'm talking to all the veterans of the United States, and I appreciate that opportunity. Here we are in the middle of July, and we just passed in both the House and the Senate what we call a GI Bill for the 21st century. That was one of our key priorities for this year. Many of you know how important the GI Bill was after World War II. I'm here because my dad came back from World War II, was able to get some education, but more important, was able to buy a house for a few $1,000s. All of a sudden, we're part of the middle class, as 8 million other veterans were. So they say that the GI Bill of 1944 made the American middle class. Well, we thought today's GIs should also have the same opportunity. And unfortunately, the GI Bill's benefits they've declined in a real terms over the years. The stipends didn't meet the real cost of college. The home loan program was irrelevant with the market as it is. So we wanted to bring everything up to date. That is, pay the real cost of college for 4 years. Make that more flexible in the way that courses could be taken. For example, a short course for 3 months would get fully paid, not just 1/4 of a year's worth of tuition. And most important, include the National Guard and Reserve units into the benefits. As you know, the Guard and Reserves are doing half the fighting in Iraq, and yet they didn't have the same access to benefits. So we were able to get the educational part of the GI Bill passed. And that's a major step forward. It'll take effect later this year, hopefully when a new school term starts, and people will be able to use it. We still have one part of the GI Bill that we will have to add in the next few months, and that is the home loan benefit. The loan values had fallen tremendously. That the VA would able to fund only a few $100,000 as opposed to the real cost of housing. But also, it was not flexible enough to allow people to refinance their homes. So in the current crisis, for example, veterans could get no special deal or no help from the Veterans Administration because there was a cap on refinancing at about $144,000. We want to remove that cap, we want to lower the fees, and we want to make the Veterans Administration the place for veterans to turn if they have a problem with refinancing or buying a home. So we hope that that's going to be settled in a few months, and we'll have a real GI Bill for the 21st century. Eligibility for this new GI Bill is for any person who was on active duty after 9/11. That is beginning in 2001. And not only are you eligible, but in this new GI Bill, if you don't use it in the time limit you have, you can pass it on to your spouse and or your children. That is, the benefit is going to be there for decades, whether you use it or your family uses it. And that's, again, another great benefit. If you choose not to want to use it or you've already been through college, you still have a benefit that is useful for your family. A really important tool, I think, in retaining our soldiers on active duty. As many of you know, we're in a situation now with the Veterans Administration that we have a war going on in Iraq and Afghanistan with hundreds of thousands of veterans of that. We think it's a small war, but we already have over 800,000 veterans from that war. In addition, the older veterans, especially from the Vietnam era, are getting older and requiring more expensive services. So you have this dual pressure on a VA from the new demands of the Iraqi war, demands from older veterans. And frankly, the VA was not in a position to meet all those needs. They were underfunded, they were underorganized, they were not prepared to meet especially the mental health demands of the new veterans. They're still fighting the mental health demands of the Vietnam soldiers. So we had to bring up the VA as our first goal in terms of its resources. And in the year and a half since I've been chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, we've been able to add over $17 billion worth of new money to health care for our veterans. That's a 40% increase. That's unprecedented. So we've put the resources in place, I think, to meet most of the needs. Now we have to provide oversight as a congressional committee to make sure the Veterans Administration is spending that money right. And we have a long way to go. This war has put demands on the system that unfortunately we were not prepared for. We should have been. Just as an example, we are able to keep alive soldiers in this war that in previous wars would have died on the battlefield. If you are alive on the battlefield and rescued or evacuated, you'll have a 95% chance of survival. And again, that's unprecedented in any war that we've ever engaged in. But that means we have more severe injuries to deal with over a longer period of time. And that's simply our obligation as a nation to do that. We have got to take care of the young men and women who come back from Iraq, no matter what their injury is. Many of them have suffered concussions and brain injury as a result of the improvised explosive devices. That's a long-term process of healing and rehabilitation. In addition, because of the nature of the war and the increased numbers of tours that have been required, the mental health needs of soldiers are very great. And once again, we were unprepared as a nation to deal with them. And we know exactly what's going to happen if we don't treat mental illness from the beginning correctly, because we've seen what would happen. We didn't do this right with our Vietnam soldiers. And as a nation, we have an apology to those of you who served in Vietnam, because we did not treat you right when you got home. We did not distinguish, those of us who were against that war, between the war and the warrior. The warrior did his job, but we did not take care of you. And so half of the homeless on the streets tonight are Vietnam veterans. A very disturbing statistic is that there have been more suicides by Vietnam veterans than the original battlefield deaths. That is over 58,000. That means that we have not done our job as a nation. And we see the same thing happening now. We have Iraqi homeless already, Iraqi vets who are homeless. We have suicide rates back at the rate at which they were in Vietnam. So we have a job to do. And if we don't do it, we will see a progression which we can predict. There'll be domestic violence and problems at home, problems on the job, drinking and drug abuse. Probably loss of family, then loss of home, and maybe suicide. In fact, many of the Iraqi veterans have already been involved in felonies as a result of their tremendous strains that they're still under. Several hundred homicides have been committed. And that's all due, or mainly due, to the mental health needs of these veterans. So we have got to do a much better job, and that's what we're trying to do in the Veterans Administration, trying to get people into the system who can do this, but also reaching out more to community resources. There are so many local groups and resources that deal with mental health needs. And soldiers can heal better, I think, and get far more support in their home areas and their home communities. So if we look more to a community resources, I think the healing and the treatment can come at a faster rate. We have several laws that should protect veterans, although the enforcement is rather uneven. For example, if you're called away from as a National Guardsman to active duty, your job should be there by law when it gets back. But we've had reports that they haven't been there. So that's one area we have to make sure that the veterans protected. In addition, we have goals for agencies to hire veterans because it's our national. It should be a national goal to say thank you to these young people who served or older people who served and hire them. And I don't think as a nation we've done a good enough job, not just legally, but having the president, for example, meeting with big corporate heads and big employers to say we're all committed to hiring veterans. I think this has to be done, as a national kind of national effort, and a voluntary effort that the president and the governors and the Congress people are all involved in, encouraging all our employers to hire veterans. There are some laws that set some goals. They are mainly honored in the breach, and we have to do a better job on that. But it requires an understanding. See, I think the president, rather than saying hire our veterans, has tried to wall off this war from our national consciousness. They don't want people to see caskets, for example. Don't want us to see injured veterans. And so people don't have a full understanding of what's going on and the needs when these heroes come home. And so they don't feel a part of trying to help them. And in democracy, if you're fighting a war, the whole community has to be involved. The whole nation has to be involved. And that means doing what you can. If you're not going to be there, hire them when they get back. I want to talk about one other priority that we have this year, which affects hundreds of thousands of veterans, and that is our disability claim system. Many of you know that we have a backlog of hundreds of thousands. It's probably up to 700,000 or 800,000 backlog claims. That means if you have applied for a disability claim, you may not hear about it for months or even years later. We, as I mentioned with our Vietnam vets, we have Vietnam vets who have been trying to get Agent Orange compensation for decades and have not been successful with the Veterans Administration. This is a disgrace. I want to do two pretty radical things. I want to first set up a system for claims in which it works sort of like your tax return now if you file with the IRS. Although 20 years ago we couldn't have said this about the IRS. When you file your 1040 and have a refund coming, you get your check back within 3 or 4 weeks, because the IRS says we're going to accept your claim, send the check out, but we'll audit it if necessary. And random process. Why don't we do that with disability claims? If you've had your claim put together with the help, say, of a certified veteran service officer, accept the claim, send the check, we'll audit it later. And then I don't care if we take 5 years, because people need the income right away. So that would stop the backlog right away. In addition, I think, as I said earlier, we got to do a real thank you to our Vietnam era veterans. We have all kinds of strange rules about who is eligible for Agent Orange. You have to prove that your boots were on the ground at a certain place where the herbicide was let go at a certain amount, and it's up to you to prove it. Well, that's ridiculous. If you were there, we should care. And if your boots were on the ground anywhere in Vietnam, if you're on the blue waters, off the shore in the Navy, if you were in the blue skies above with the Air Force, we should honor those claims. I'm for honoring them, just accepting the ones that have been filed. There's several 100,000, and saying thank you, because many of you have cancers that came from Agent Orange. You should at least have the sense that the nation is behind you with the honoring of these claims. So that's a job we have to do, and I hope we do that before the end of this year. We are trying to find a way to communicate what we are doing here in the Congress on behalf of our nation's veterans, so people are informed and could ask us questions, and also tell us where we have to do better. So this report from myself, Bob Filner, who's chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, we hope to do on a regular basis. But political knowledge is really important, but political participation is even more important. Voting, of course, is number one, but there are other ways to be involved. Just letting other people know of what's going on, getting involved in campaigns for people who support veterans, for example. You should not have to fight for your benefits. We made a contract with you, and we should be honoring it. But the way American politics works is whoever applies pressure gets some attention. And if the veterans are not applying a pressure just by asking or talking or knowledge, you're not going to get what's due you. And it's up to, I think, all the veterans of the United States, and there's 25 million of you, that are constantly asking questions, what's going on, and keeping informed, because if you don't apply any pressure, you won't get what's due you.